Well, good morning and welcome to our Monday Bible study. For those in person and those watching online, we're glad that you're here today. Over the last couple of weeks, we've finished Solomon's reign. As Solomon has died, his son Rehoboam takes over, but immediately Rehoboam doesn't just do what his father does. He decides he's going to go even harsher, and part of that harshness leads to harder work for the people, more taxation, and God has already raised up Jeroboam to essentially rip the kingdom apart. 10 tribes in the north and Judah in the south. And as this happens, Jeroboam comes up with the people and they say, hey, lighten our load. Kind of ideas going back to the story of the Exodus. And Rehoboam says, no. I'm going to make it harder. And essentially they have a civil war. They break apart. And Jeroboam begins to reign in the north, and as he does, he makes the comment politically, my power is going to be usurped because the people are still going to Jerusalem to worship. And if they're going to Jerusalem, not just to worship, but they're going to take their offerings, their money, eventually their allegiance. So he begins to do what? Y'all remember? He begins to build 2 different altars, putting in front of them golden calves, and people begin to worship, and God says this shouldn't be happening. And it becomes a problem in Jeroboam in the north, Rehoboam in the south. And as we get in today, we see that those that follow Jeroboam and Rehoboam, let's just be honest, they're not any better. So we ended last week, I believe, at the end of 14, so we will pick up in chapter 15 today. Some of what we'll do is kind of read a little quickly over some of these initial successors, and then we'll start, as we get into others, we'll start to slow down. But what we'll see is as things get worse and worse and worse, the question becomes, who's going to come, who's God going to send to bring things better, to make things better? And we'll get to the story of Elijah in a little bit. Now, in the 8th year of King Jeroboam, son of Nebat, Abijam began to reign over Judah. So as King Jeroboam still reigning in the north, Abijam in the south, he reigned for 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, daughter of Abshalom. He committed all the sins his father did before him. His heart was not true to the Lord, like the heart of his father David. Nevertheless, for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem, setting up his son after him and establishing Jerusalem, because David did what was right in the sight of the Lord, and did not turn aside from anything that he commanded from all the days of his life. Over and over again, we'll see that in the southern kingdom of Judah, the reason God doesn't get rid of them is his promise to David. It's only because of David that God continues to stay faithful to an unfaithful people. Because David did what was right sight in the Lord and did not turn from anything that he commanded all the days of his life, except, so there's always that reminder, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. The war begun between Rehoboam and Jeroboam continued all the days of his life. So one of the things we have to understand is during this period of the divided monarchy, the initial period and onward, there's always going to be war between the 2 groups. Over resources, over settlements, over who's in charge. And you got to imagine being people mixed up into this, how do you think it's going to feel? It's going to put people, just like any kind of civil war, but any war, people are going to be put in marginal places. People that don't have power and authority are usually the ones that what? Go without. Later we're going to meet a widow, and she's going to be representative of essentially all the people in this time period that are kind of on the periphery. Because it's 2 houses, Jeroboam's house and now Rehoboam's house, his descendants, that are fighting. And it's the people in charge that are fighting, and other people are the ones that usually are the ones that suffer. Abijam slept with his ancestors. They buried him in the city of David. His son Asa succeeded him. In the 20th year of King Jeroboam, Asa began to reign over Judah. He reigned 41 years. So we just read one who just reigned a couple of years. Now we're going to read one that reigned 40 years, and he gets about as much space as the other. So one of the things we have to make a comment at, 1 Kings is not a historical book. Over and over again, it'll say, was this not written down in the annals of kings? It's not meant to be a history of Israel and Judah. It's meant to be a theological, historical understanding of why things turned out the way they are. So as we'll read today, we're going to read all the negative aspects that the writers of 1 King look backwards and say happened. But during this period, both the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom would have had some successes. If we were to write history, we would want to know what the wars were. We would want to know, how much they controlled. We'd want to know some of the victories they had. The writer of 1st and 2nd Kings isn't really interested in all that. As we'll talk about in a little bit with one of the northern kings, or the southern kings, other inscriptions outside of the story tell us of kind of how big and powerful they were, at least in their region, because they were remembered even after, outside the biblical narrative. Just a reminder, 1st and 2nd Kings isn't concerned about the full history. He says, go read it somewhere else. 40 years of somebody's reign, you think you would add a little bit of what they did, those kind of things. Not all that concerned. Concern is they weren't faithful. That's the main perspective that we're getting from 1st and 2nd Kings. So he reigns for 40 years. Asa did what was right in the sight of the Lord. We get somebody that did good. As his father David had done, he put away the male temple prostitutes out of the land, removed all the idols that his ancestors made. He also removed his mother Maacah from being queen mother because she had made an abominable image of Asherah. Asa cut down her image and buried it at the Wadi Kidron. But the high places were not taken away. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was true to the Lord all of his days. He brought into the house of the Lord the votive gifts of his father and his own votive gifts, silver, gold, and utensils. So we get, for a brief moment, a good king in Judah. 40 years. Now, he does a lot of good things, but he doesn't go all the way. He doesn't get rid of the high places. Remember, the temple is supposed to be the only place of worship during this period, from King Solomon onward. But he brings back gold, he brings back silver to the treasury. Remember when we read earlier during Rehoboam, it was stolen from the Egyptian king. So he's replenishing what had been stolen. Now we read there was a war between Asa and King Baasha of Israel all of their days. King Baasha of Israel went up against Judah and built Ramah to prevent anyone from going out or coming in to King Asa of Judah. Then Asa took all the silver and the gold that were left in the treasuries of the house of the Lord and the treasury of the king's house, and he gave them into the hands of his servant. King Asa sent him to King Ben-Hadad of Hezron of Aram, who resided in Damascus, saying, "Let there be an alliance between me and you." So he's been doing good. Now there is a king in Israel. We'll find out more about him later. Asa's been in control so long, but towards the end of there's a war between the north and the south, and a fear that these treasury, beautiful things, are going to get stolen. He sends them as a gift to the king that is in Damascus for an alliance. He essentially raids his own treasury and gives it to another outsider. "I'm sending you a present of silver and gold. Break your alliance with King Baasha of Israel so that he may withdraw from me." Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa and sent commanders of his armies against the cities of Israel. He conquered Ijon, Dan, Abel, Beth, Maacah, and all the Shinneroth with all the land of Naphtali. When Baasha heard of it, he stopped building Ramah and lived in Tirzah. Then King Asa made a proclamation to all Judah. None was exempt. They carried away the stones of Ramah and its timber, which Baasha had building. With King Asa built Geba of Benjamin and Mitzpah. Now the rest of all the acts of Asa, all of his power, all that he did, all the cities that he built, are they not written in the book of Annals, the kings of Judah? So again, you want to know more information, go read it there. We don't have it, but you can go read it there. But in his old age, he was diseased in his feet. Then Asa slept with his ancestors, was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. His son Jehoshaphat succeeded him. Naboth, son of Jeroboam, began to reign over Israel. So now we have back in the north, in the second year of King Asa of Judah. So notice that they located each other's reign in the parallel to each other kingdom. So, Asa begins his service, and so the king of the north, so and the king of the south. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, walking the ways of his ancestors, and the sin he caused Israel to commit. Baasha, son of Ahijah, of the house of Issachar, conspired against him. And Baasha struck him down at Gibeath, which belonged to the Philistines, for Nabab of all of Israel were laying siege. So Baasha killed Nabab in the third year of King Asa of Judah and succeeded him. So we see in the north, they don't have a long reign like Asa. It's just this constant what? King after another king. As soon as he was killed, he killed all the house of Jeroboam. He left to the house of Jeroboam not one that breathed until he had destroyed it, according to the word of the Lord that he had spoken by his servant, Ahijah the Shilonite, because of the sins of Jeroboam that he committed and that Israel caused to commit, and because of the anger to which he provoked the Lord, the God of Israel. So he goes in and wipes out anybody in Jeroboam's house. Now the rest of the acts of Nabab, all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? There was war between Asa and King Baasha, all of Israel, of all of their days. So just an awareness during all of this upheaval between the north and the south in terms of new kings coming and going, there's constant what? Civil war. So just imagine living in a season of your whole life where it's just constant back and forth, back and forth. In the third year of King Asa of Judah, Baasha, son of Ahijah, began to reign over Israel at Tirzah. He reigned 24 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, walking in the way of Jeroboam, and in the sin he caused Israel to commit. That sin over and over again is idolatry. So we're going to read a little quicker here, and then we're going to get to a few more stories. The word of the Lord came to Jehu, son of Hanani, against Baasha, saying, Since I exalted you out of the dust and made you leader over my people Israel, and you have walked in the way of Jeroboam, have caused my people of Israel to sin, provoking me to anger with their sins, therefore I will consume Baasha and his house, and I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Anyone belonging to Baasha who dies in the city, the dog shall eat, and any one of his who dies in the field, the birds of the air shall eat. Now the rest of the acts of Baasha, what he did, his power, are they not written in the book of Annals of the kings of Israel? Baasha slept with his ancestors, was buried at Tirzah, and his son Elah succeeded him. Moreover, the word of the Lord came by the prophet Jehu, son of Hanani, against Baasha and his house, both because of all the evil that he did in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger with the work of his hands in being like the house of Jeroboam, also because he destroyed it. So we just have a brief story here of a prophet coming up and proclaiming a prophetical oracle. Baasha continues to reign, dies. In the 20th year of King Asa of Judah, Elah, son of Baasha, began to reign over Israel in Tirzah. He reigned 2 years. But his servant Zermi, commander of half of his chariots, conspired against him. When he was at Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arza, who was in charge of the palace at Tirzah, Zemiri came in, struck him down, and killed him in the 27th year of King Asa of Judah, and succeeded him. So here we have another story of a coup. King gets killed after he's gotten drunk. When he began to reign, Zemi, as soon as he was seated himself on the throne, he killed all the house of Baasha. He did not leave a single male or his kindred or his friends. Thus Zimri destroyed all the house of Baasha according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke against Baasha by the prophet Jurah, because of all the sins of Baasha and the sins of son Elah committed. Now the rest of the acts of Elah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? So in the 27th year of King Asa of Judah, Zimri reigned 7 days. So just notice, it's very chaotic. You have somebody that usurps another king, becomes king, fulfills the prophet's essentially word of Baasha. Now Zimri reigned 7 days. Now the troops that were encamped against Gibeath, which belonged to the Philistines, and the troops who were encamped heard it and said, Zimri has conspired. He has killed the king. Therefore all of Israel made Omri, commander of the army, king over Israel, the day in the camp. So Zimri is essentially on the throne, but the people hear of it and they don't like it. So they make Omri commander. When Zimri saw the city was taken, he went into the citadel of the king's house. He burned down the king's house over himself with fire and died. Because of the sins he had committed, doing evil in the sight of the Lord, walking in the way of Jeroboam, and for the sin that he committed, causing Israel sin. So he essentially burns down the palace and himself with it, commits suicide. Now the rest of the acts of Zimri and the conspiracy that he made, are they not written in the book of annals, the kings of Israel? So the people are now without a king. The people of Israel were divided in 2 parts. Half the people following Timni, son of Gineth, to make him king, and the other followed Omri. But the people who followed Omri overcame the people who followed Timni, son of Gineth. So Timni died, and Omri became king. In the 31st year of King Asa of Judah, Omri began to reign over Israel. He reigned for 12 years, 6 of them in Tirzah. So we have a new king in the north, Omri. And he becomes king because he and his followers defeat another so-called would-be king. Omri did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did more evil than all of who were before him. For he walked in the way of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and in the sins he caused Israel to commit, provoking the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger by their idols. Now the rest of the acts of Omri that he did, the power that he showed, are they not written in the book of the king of the annals of Israel? Omri slept with his ancestors. He was buried in Samaria. His son Ahab succeeded him. So Ahab's the king that we're going to get the stories about that many of you are familiar with. Omri, however, is not really spoke about much in 1 Kings. But he had a fairly wide legacy. One that, as we'll talk about in a second, we can read about today. So I'm going to let somebody pass these out for me. Jane, would you pass these out? I've got more if you need them. So what I'm passing out is what they call the Mesha stele. It is a Moabite stele. It would have been fairly big, and written on it would have been kind of a history of a king, and it would have been a commemorative of a king's life and legacy. So as they're passing around, it dates to the time that we're talking about here, 840 BC, somewhere around in there. And as you get it, you're not going to be able to read it. It's written in a very old Canaanite inscription that is a mix of some of the early languages that would have been in the area, prefigure to what we would know as ancient Hebrew as well. The Mesh still details the victories of a king Mesha of Moab over the kingdom of Israel and Judah. So we have some extra biblical verification of some of the things that are happening during this period. The stele contains about 34 lines of text. They've been translated into English. Not all of the words are necessarily there. Some are missing. I've got a translation that I'm going to read that kind of gives us an awareness. So it is about this king Mesha of the Moabites. So if you've got your map here, you can go down here in the south is Moab. We've met some of Moabites already in the biblical narrative. Does anybody remember a famous Moabite? Ruth. Ruth was a Moabite. We've already met some other Moabites in terms of Solomon, some of his wives. We hear that he had a Moabite wife, brought some of the Moabite gods with her. The Moabites, their kind of central deity was Chemosh, and like many others, they had kind of a head god and then other gods within there. So I'm going to read what this, essentially it's a big plaque, would have read. I am Mesha, son of Chemosh, the god, king of Moab, the Dinabite. My father ruled over Moab 30 years, and I ruled after my father. I made the high place for Chemosh in Kohori, a place of salvation. For he saved me from all the kings and made me enjoy the in sight of my enemies. Omri, king of Israel, oppressed Moab for a long time because Chemosh was angry with his country. His son succeeded him, Ahab, and he also declared, I will oppress Moab in my days, he declared thus. So we've got in this, during this period, the northern kingdom is having some victory over this period of Moab. And in it, it names Omri, and a little name, without naming him, Ahab. So it's really interesting that this ancient text gives us awareness is that what the biblical text doesn't give us is how much Israel is expanding and defeating its enemies. Now, their justification for why this is happening is their God's upset with them. Later in it, you see that during this period of war, they actually do have some victories over the Israelites and take back some of the territory of Moab. I just leave that with you, so it's interesting for me. You know, part of archaeology is, trying to see where some of the stories that we read are played out, from a different perspective. As we'll read a little bit more today, some of the kind of awareness is that Israel's not living in isolation. They're living amongst their neighbors, and they're not just having war with each other. They're having war around them, and their gods are interacting with the people in terms of false worship, in terms of other things. I just find it interesting and wanted y'all to have a little bit of that to go with. So Omri dies, Ahab succeeds him. In the 38th year of King Asa of Judah, Ahab, son of Omri, began to reign over Israel. Ahab, son of Omri, reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. Ahab, son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who were before him. And we'll get to hear some of those stories. And as it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, he took as his wife Jezebel, daughter of King Ethabal of the Sidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. So if you've got your map here, she's coming from the area of Phoenicia, and she's coming from essentially Sidon. And we're going to find that in a little bit, Elijah is actually going to go there to where she was from. She's coming from a Canaanite area with Canaanite religion, and she's going to be bringing that to the people. He took his wife Jezebel, daughter of King of the Sidon, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. He erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. So he makes his capital in Samaria. He builds essentially a temple for Baal, the Canaanite god. We'll talk more about him in a minute. Ahab also made a sacred pole. Ahab did more to provoke the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than all the kings of Israel who were before him. In his days, Hill of Bethel built Jericho. He laid its foundations at the cost of Omri, his firstborn, and set up its gates at the cost of his youngest son, Sarah, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by Joshua, son of none. So he's building these places. He builds an altar. He's also doing some other things that sound a little suspicious. It says, at the cost of his firstborn. What do you think that means? Yeah. I mean, there's some cost here. So we get that Ahab is not just a bad king, but he's married Jezebel, a Canaanite, brings her in, and then builds essentially temples for their gods. So Baal is kind of the chief god in Canaanite religion. I've got a couple just graphics here that I printed off. Here's one. It's another steel inscription. Baal is a warrior type god, but he's also the god of thunder and rain. And those things represent what? Fertility. And as the god, he is one who is powerful. Another votive figure would have been something like this. And he also, his consort, his queen of heaven would have been Asherah. I thought I had a picture of her. I must not have printed it. But Asherah would have been also a symbol of fertility and worship for fertility. They would have taken trees. Asherah poles, we'll read more about those. They would have taken trees and used those trees to sculpt essentially statues and ways of connecting. If you think about a tree, what is it connected to? By roots. It represents growth and new life. And if she represents that part of fertility, he represents the rain. So one of the things we're going to look here is if Ahab is going after Baal and Asherah, part of the reason he does it is we would call false worship. Part of it is economics. Where do they live? They live in an area where what? You need what? Need rain. Everybody needs rain. They live in a place where rain's not always the most secure thing. And you need to be a king that can secure what? Rain. That's the king's job. Now, we wouldn't think of that today, would we? But if you don't have rain, what do you not have? You don't have food. If you don't have food, you can't what? You can't do anything. You also don't have livestock. And part of the king's job was to secure in the ancient world what the people needed. You know, in Egypt, rain wasn't necessarily as important because they had the Nile. But they still needed it. So the Nile in ancient Egypt, kind of mythic and religious system, becomes the center of it. In a place where there is some places where you've got some rain, but it's a very desert type climate, rain's important. It also tells you that you have a strong connection to your God. You know, just like today, most people vote on what? The economy. They say they vote on a lot of stuff, but it's usually the economy. People are loyal if the economy is what? If it's bad. Not only that, imagine if the economy in the ancient world, even today, if it goes bad, who still has what they need? King, the rich. Who suffers? Yeah, poor people. People on the margin suffer. So as we'll start to hear this story, we're going to hear of a story of a king who is trying to what? Make himself, through Baal, this worship to what? Bring prosperity to his people. And the way he does it is, from a theological perspective of the ancient Hebrews, is to use a false god to control what is only God's to control, which is the weather. We too try to control our world, don't we? We do. I mean, most of us, if we're honest, we're kind of out of touch with the natural world because, when we have drought, we still have running water in the house. When it's hot, we can, turn the AC on. A lot of people on the margins aren't the ones that have that stability. And we'll see that within the story of Elijah. So just kind of give you that background is part of maybe the reason that he is so insistent on Baal is part of it is control, but part of it is to get what? What he needs to reign and control. And if that's true, what is God going to do? So we look at chapter 17. Now Elijah the Tishbite of Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab, he just shows up on the scene. This very important person that we're going to find just shows up on the scene. I want you to think about John the Baptist. Beginning of the Gospels, he just what? Shows up on the scene. And what does he do? He speaks against those in what? Power. One of the things we'll see over and over again throughout the biblical narrative is when God wants to speak, he uses those outside of what? The powers and systems that have been established. And they're one of the ones that are going to come and offer an alternative way of being in the world. Whether it's Elijah or Elisha, whether it's the other prophets that will come up after them, these prophets are not part of the system. And they're coming to essentially say to the system that's in control, God's not happy. He just shows up to the king. As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, thou shalt be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word. The word of the Lord came to him saying, go from here and turn eastward. So he goes to the king, essentially just says to the king, listen, for 3 years there's not going to be a lick of rain. Now that's Baal's prerogative. He's supposed to be what? The rain god. You've turned away the people. Well, guess who is over creation? The Creator. And he's told me there's not going to be rain for 3 years. Let's see what your little gods do now. Then he tells him, go eastward, hide yourself. Imagine you go up to the king and you tell him something like that. What's the king want to do? Yeah. Not only kill you, you don't want anybody else hearing about it. That's not good for business, is it? So he tells him to go and to hide. Hide yourself in the Wadi Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. You shall drink from the wadi. I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. So he's not to take anything with him. He's just to go out and essentially into the wilderness and rely purely on God to take care of him. You're going to drink out of the wadi and you're going to be fed by ravens. Where the king sits in what? A royal palace and eats all of this food. He's going to be going out and just being what? Like the people in the Exodus journey, completely relying on God. Now this should remind you of John the Baptist a little bit. John the Baptist, where does he live out? In the wilderness? Dresses himself in camel hair and eats what? Locusts and wild honey. He's what? He's dependent on nobody for nothing. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord. He went and lived by the Wadi Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the wadi. He's eating pretty good. Now, I don't know if y'all know much about ravens. They're not really the nicest birds, are they? And if I had to think of a generous bird, it probably wouldn't be a raven. They are smart. Yeah. I've heard crows and ravens can pick out people they don't like.
That's what I've heard. If you have to against the flock, they will worm in.
Yeah.
One woman studying crows had to put on a costume because if you if you go near a dead crow and they think you killed it, they will be very upset with you.
Oh my. One of the things we also know about ravens is in the Levitical codes, they're unclean birds. So it's interesting, these unclean birds are the ones bringing what? Nourishment to Elijah out in the wilderness. God is using His own creation to sustain and to nourish Elijah. Just a reminder, who's in control? It's not King Ahab. It's God. But after a while, the wadi dried up because there had been no rain in the land. So Elijah's out there and now he's running out of water, like everybody else. The word of the Lord came to him saying, "Go up to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and live there. For I commanded a widow there to feed you." So he gets up and goes to Sidon, which is in Phoenicia, which is the very place where Jezebel comes from. He goes to an outsider, a widow. Not somebody from Israel, not somebody from Judah, but a Gentile, we would say in the New Testament. And she will be the one that will feed you. Now, let's ask ourselves a question. If you had to be provided for, a widow is probably not the person you'd go to in the ancient world. Because in the ancient world, widows were without. They didn't have a husband. And if they didn't have maybe a son or somebody that was old enough to take care of them, they were usually kind of on the outskirts of society. It's one of the commands that God gives Israel is to what? Take care of the widows and the orphans, because those are the people that go without the most. And part of the job of a king is to do what? Take care of the, as we'll see within the story, this woman, whether she's not been taken care of, kings don't do what they're supposed to do they? Because Israel would say, Israelites looking back would say most kings are what? Only concerned about themselves. In a minute, we're going to see what Ahab is doing during this drought, and it's not taking care of people, it's taking care of himself. So God sends him to an unlikely source of nourishment, a widow. When he came to the gate of the town, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and said, "Bring me a little water in a vessel so that I may drink." Remember, it's during a severe drought. As she was going to bring it, he called to her and said, "Bring me a morsel of bread in your hand." Now the water is one thing, but food? But she said, "As the Lord, Yahweh, your God lives, I have nothing baked, only a handful of meal in a jar and a little oil in a jug. And I am now gathering a couple of sticks so that I may go home and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." Listen, I was getting some sticks together because we're going to eat our last meal, because we got nothing else left. So God chooses a widow who is on her last meal for her and her son. Elijah said to her, "Do not be afraid. Go and do as you have said, but first make me a little cake of it. Bring it to me, and afterwards make something for yourself and your son. For thus says the Lord of God of Israel, the jar of meal will not be emptied, and the jug of oil will not fail until the day the Lord sends rain on the earth." She went and did as Elijah said, so that she as well as he and her household ate for many days. The jar of meal was not empty, neither did the jug of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord that spoke by Elijah. So a miracle happens within the story.
I'm going to say, how much faith did that widow have to make
Yeah.
a meal for him first?
Yeah,
Because she was already getting ready
yeah,
to go make it for herself and even never mind that for her son.
Yeah.
And getting ready to die. But she went and obeyed Elijah.
Yeah.
I know the Lord prepared her ahead of time because it said, I've told the widow woman to stand.
Yeah.
But I just stand in awe of that.
Yeah. You know, one of the things we see over and over again within the biblical narrative is these unlikely people are the people of faith. The people you wouldn't expect. Usually the people that have nothing. You know, yesterday in Dr. Moore's sermon, you know, it was the Samaritan leper that came back and worshiped in front of Jesus. Not the other 9. Even though they did what Jesus told them to do, it was the one who didn't necessarily have a place to go. What priest were he going to tell that he went back and worshiped Jesus, praised Jesus. Here we have a widow who is, like Jessica said, is faithful in this. And as she is, God provides, not Baal, because in her place where Jezebel has come from, that's the God who's supposed to be providing for them. But it's Yahweh. After this, the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, became ill. His illness was so severe that there was no breath left in him. So just a reminder, in the Old Testament, the sign of life is breath. You know, when a baby takes its first breath, it's that spirit, the Ruah of God coming in. When he takes its last breath, a person dies. Breath is always seen as a gift of God. And here he takes its last breath. And it's what? It's when you die. So when she said to Elijah, "What have you against me, O man of God? You have come to me to bring my sin to remembrance and cause the death of my son?" But he said to her, "Give me your son." He took him from her bosom, carried him into the upper chamber where he was lodging, laid him on his own bed. He cried out to the Lord, "O Lord my God, you have brought calamity upon the widow with whom I am staying by killing her son." Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times, and he cried out to the Lord, "O Lord my God, let this child's life come into him again." The Lord listened to the voice of Elijah. The life of the child came into him again, and he revived. Elijah took the child, brought him down from the upper chamber into the house, gave him to his mother. Then Elijah said, "See, your son is alive." So the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is truth." This woman, her son dies, and she is panicked. What have I done? You know, I brought you in my house, you fed us, great, but now he's dead. The very thing I was trying to avoid. And Elijah, takes him up to his loft, his room, prays, and God revives the son. When Jesus is asked once, "Who do people say that I am?" Some say you're John the Baptist come back from the dead. Some say you're what? Elijah or Elisha. Why? Because Jesus is doing some of these very things. He's called into a house, a child has died. What does he say? "She's but asleep. Raise up." Baal is not in charge of anything. And the only one who can give life is the creator of life. And in the story, we see over and over again, as we're going to see in just a minute, Ahab and his prophets of Baal they're useless. They can't do anything. Because only power of life and death, of creation, of rain, lies in the hands of Yahweh, the Lord, the God of Israel. After many days, the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year of the drought. So he's been away in hiding for 3 years. There's been drought in the land for 3 years. You know, for us, we'll think about a recession for 3 years. You know, just think about, 3 years of things just not being the way they need to be. People get a little testy, don't they? People get a little what? They struggle to make sense of things. They'll go to any lengths to what? Get things to work. Go present yourself to Ahab. I will send rain on the earth. And we got to know he's been hiding for 3 years because, as we'll find out, Ahab's been looking for him. He's a wanted man. So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab. The famine was severe in Samaria. Ahab summoned Obadiah, not the prophet Obadiah that you meet later in the Old Testament, but Obadiah, who was in charge of the palace. He's essentially, if we were to put it in today's terms, he's chief of staff. He's over the house. He's over everything that is in charge of, in the house of the king. Now, Obadiah revered the Lord greatly. When Jezebel was killing off the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets, hid them 50 to a cave, and provided them with bread and water. Now what we're going to see is Obadiah is faithful to God, but still serves King Ahab and does it what? Undercover. So he's got courage, but he's also what? Scared. Then Ahab said to Obadiah, "Go through the land to all the springs of water, into all the wadis. Perhaps we may find grass to keep the horses and mules alive, and not to lose some of the animals." Famine is so severe, and what is his desire to do what? Keep what alive? Livestock. It's probably the horses and the mules that serve his household, his chariots. Go around the land, try to find any water left. Don't give it to the people that are what? Dying of thirst. Give it to what? To the animals. It just shows you kind of how the king's motive is. It's not towards what? The people. It's towards himself. And he is going one way and Obadiah is going the other. This isn't necessarily what kings do. Go look for water. So they divided the land between them to pass through it. Ahab went in one direction by himself. Obadiah went in another direction by himself. As Obadiah was on the way, Elijah met him. Obadiah recognized him, fell on his face, and said, "It is you, my lord Elijah." Elijah is well known. Not only well known, but well revered. And Obadiah bows to him. He answered, "It is I. Go tell your Lord that Elijah is here." Obadiah, I don't know what I'm doing. Just go back and tell your Lord that I'm here. Have I sinned that you would hand me to your servant over to Ahab to kill me? That's his reaction. Whoa, are you crazy? If I go tell him this, as we're going to read, and you aren't where you're supposed to be, guess what's going to happen to me? As the Lord your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom to which my Lord has not sent to seek you. And when they would say, he is not there, he would require an oath of the kingdom or nation that they had not found you. Listen, the king's been looking for you so much. He has sent people everywhere. And when they come back, they have to give an oath that they didn't find you. Because if it finds out that what? If you mess up an oath, guess what happens? But now you say, go tell your Lord Elijah is here. As soon as I have gone from you, the Spirit of the Lord will carry you. I don't know where. So when I come and tell Ahab and he cannot find you, he will kill me, although I, your servant, have revered the Lord from my mouth. Obadiah is what? Afraid of Ahab. So much so that when the prophet of God comes to him and says, go and do, he doesn't trust. As we're going to see in a little bit, Elijah is going to speak to the people, and they're kind of a wishy-washy people. We're going to call them a little limp, in the way that they can't make one way or another. And Obadiah kind of represents that spirit of wanting to do the right thing, but being in a situation where if you do, you might lose everything you've got. Has not the Lord told what I did when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord, how I hid the 100 of the Lord's prophets, 50 to a cave, provided them with bread and water? Yet now you say, go tell your Lord Elijah is here, and he will surely kill me. I've done a lot of good. Do I need to do any more? Some of us feel like that sometimes too, don't we?
He at least wants reassurance.
Yeah, he does. A lot. Elijah said, as the Lord of hosts lives. Very different from what? The widow who asks and does. Elijah said, as the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. Now just imagine you're about to get a face-off between the king and the thorn in his side. He blames him for what? This drought. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, is it you, you troubler of Israel? He answered, I have not troubled Israel, but you have, and your father's house, because you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals. Now therefore have I, all Israel, assembled for me at Mount Carmel, with the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. All right, I'm here. Here's what we're going to do. I want you to get the prophets, 450 of the prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah that eat at Jezebel's table. Just a reminder, you're keeping up all of these people. You're praying for rain. They're supposed to be helping you. I want you to get them and bring all the people of Israel to Mount Carmel. And we're going to have a contest, essentially what's going to happen. Them against lowly old me. So Ahab sent all Israelites and assembled the prophets at Mount Carmel. Elijah then came to all the people and said, how long will you go limping with two different opinions? What does your translation say? Verse 21.
How long will you waver between two opinions?
Yeah. How long are you going to try to serve two masters? Jesus would say you can only love one and hate the other. Can't love them both. Are you going to be for Baal? Are you going to be for Yahweh? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. The people did not answer him a word. People like Obadiah are what? Afraid. Then Elijah said to the people, I, even I only, am a prophet of the Lord. By Baal's prophets number 450. Let 2 bulls be given to us. Let them choose 1 bull for themselves, cut it in pieces, and lay it on the wood, but put no fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood, but put no fire to it. Then you will call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord, Yahweh. The God who answers by fire is indeed God. You're going to have a contest between their God and Israel's God, Yahweh, the Lord. And whichever can be engulfed in fire will be what? The real one. So they took the bull that was given to them. They prepared it and called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, crying, O Baal, answer us. But there was no voice and no answer. They limped about the altar that they had made. At noon, Elijah mocked them, saying, Cry aloud, surely he is a God. Either he is meditating, or he has wandered away, or he is on a journey. Perhaps he is asleep and must be awakened. So imagine all of these prophets calling out to Baal, doing all of these different things till they get so tired that they're limping around. And over in a corner is Elijah. I imagine him sitting in a little chair. And he's making fun of them. Maybe your God is going on a journey. Maybe he's got other business to take care of. Maybe he fell asleep. Then they cried aloud, and as was their custom, they began to cut themselves with sword and lances until blood gushed over them. They get to the point that they're so desperate they begin to harm themselves in sacrificial rites. At midday past, they raved on until the time of offering of the oblation, but there was no voice, no answer, no response. Nobody's home. Then Elijah said to the people, "Come closer to me." All the people came close to him. First he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, "Israel shall be your name." With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. Then he made a trench around the altar, large enough to contain 2 measures of seed. Next he put the wood in order, cut the bull in pieces, and laid it on the wood. So just imagine he's taking his time as he does this. Everybody's watching. He's doing one thing after another, all by himself. He said, "Fill your jars with water and pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood." I'm going to make this a little harder. Y'all ever try to burn something that's wet? It's hard. Then he said, "Do it a second time." So they did a second time. And again, he said, "Do it a third time." They did it a third time. So that the water ran around the altar and filled the trench also with water. So listen, we're not going to make this easy on Yahweh. We're going to saturate this wood and the offering so that it will nearly be impossible to get a fire going. At that time, the offering of the oblation, the prophet Elijah came near and said, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel. I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your bidding. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back." Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, the dust, even licked up the water that was in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, "The Lord indeed is God. The Lord indeed is God." Elijah said to them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Do not let one of them escape." They seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the Wadi Kishon and killed them there. What had Jezebel done to the prophets? They had their opportunity. They sat at the table of the king and the queen for 3 years. If they had any power, they should have what? Should have used it. Cleans house. So you can just imagine Ahab, king over Israel, seeing this happen. Not only does he see it happen, like Solomon, he's got a wife he wants to what? Keep happy. These were her what? Her people. Elijah said to Ahab, "Get up, eat, drink, for there is sound of rushing rain." So Ahab went up and ate and drank, and Elijah went up to the top of Carmel. There he bowed himself down upon the earth and put his face between his knees. He said to his servant, he brought somebody with him, Go up now, look towards the sea. He went up and looked and said, there is nothing. He said, go again 7 times. So we can imagine Elijah is bent over praying, and his servant goes back and looks over the horizon at the sea and comes back 7 times. The 7th time he said, look, a little cloud no bigger than a person's hand is rising out of the sea. Then he said, go say to Ahab, harness your chariot and go down before the rain stops you. And a little while the heavens grew black and the clouds and wind, and there was heavy rain. Ahab rode off and went to Jezreel. That's their winter palace. But the hand of the Lord was on Elijah. He girded up his loins and ran in front of Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. So just imagine. He's praying, finally gets sight of rain coming from the sea. He tells Ahab, the rain's coming fast. You need to get down before you what? Flooded. So he goes about a 17-mile journey from Mount Carmel to Jezreel. He's on his what? His horse and chariot. Elijah runs on 2 feet, passes Ahab, and beats him to Jezreel. Now Ahab gets to Jezreel and he's got to tell Jezebel what's been going on. We'll pick up there next week. Many of y'all have heard the stories of Elijah, the stories of Ahab. I hope that you see that they're in a larger context of 1 Kings. After a series of kings are constantly what? Bringing the people farther and farther away from God. As there's turmoil between north and south, constant war. As there is famine in the land, yet the king is more worried about his livestock than what? The people. Someone like Elijah, who is outside of the system, comes into it and says, this is not right. This is not the way God intended. And God will show you who's really in charge now. It's not King Ahab, it's not Jezebel, it's not Baal, it's not Asherah. And for our world today, we often have to take a step aside and say, people that seem to want to be in charge display lots of power, but one of the things we'll see over and over again, their power is just an imitation of real power. They can't make it rain. Now, all the miracles we can do with technology can't what? Can't change the weather, and it can't bring a little boy back to life. Let's pray. Gracious God, we just thank you for the way that you work through us and in us and for us. God, as we continue to study the stories of 1st and 2nd Kings, we see an ancient people struggling to be faithful. Leaders who often struggle with power to do what keeps them in power. And oftentimes the people on the bottom are the ones that suffer. But we are so thankful for Elijah, a prophet. For he in many ways becomes the forebearer of those that come after. That speak truth to power, that remind us of where true power and authority rest, and goes to those people that are most unseen, like the widow. And the fullness of you we see most revealed in Jesus, who does those things not just to a few people, but for the whole world. Lord, help us to continue to study, to grow together, and to be your people. We pray this in the name of Christ our Lord.